right, everyone, welcome back to the old switcheroo where we're talking gaming retro with Mike and Jaymo.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Jaymo. Today we're taking a demonic detour from our normal quest to research and review all 250 plus games in the Nintendo Switch Online catalog. In honor of Spoopy season, we are researching and reviewing another double creature feature, Zombies Ate My Neighbors and Ghoul Patrol on the SNES, in an episode we are calling Zombies Ate My Podcast. Now, Mike, this time I don't want your opinion on my title, okay? I want to go straight to our guest hosts. We have Nick and Josh from Smashing Game Time. What do you think of that title, boys?
Well, JMO, I love that. I love that title
I know
because
you do.
because we recently had a podcast episode of the with the same name.
So Nick and Josh, they host the always entertaining Smashing Game Time podcast, and they have smashinggametime.com. They wax poetic about modern games, and they dive deep into the headlines of gaming's yesteryear. And you guys are probably the first friends, or one of the first friends this podcast has ever had. You
Oh,
had me on the show for episode 109, where we discussed Steamboat Willie horror parodies, and then you had both of us back for episode 114 where we gave our hot takes on the top games of the year 2000. It was so much fun recording that Mike and I were both like, we got to have these guys on our show. So back in February, YouTube requested Zombies Ate My Neighbors. Okay.
we did.
Now we should get this out of the way now. Zaman is not in the Nintendo Switch Online Retro catalog, but for the low price of $14.99, you can purchase it from the eShop as a two-pack where it's bundled with its infamous sequel, Ghoul Patrol. I'm a big fan of the original game, I'm a big fan of your podcast, guys. So we're like, yeah, let's do it. Right? It's a bit of diversion of the show's mission statement, but yes, Nick and Josh, we'd love to discuss Zombies Ate My Neighbors for you both. So you fast forward 8 months later. I'm doing the show notes for this podcast. I am having trouble coming up with a title. And I'm like, what if I just go simple with it? What if I just Zombies Ate My Podcast? It's brilliant. It's so simple. The next morning, I open up my phone. Hey, cool. There's a new Smashing Game Time episode. Motherfuckers. You requested Zombies Ate My Neighbors. Then you beat us to the punch and stole my freaking title, you guys.
I would like to apologize personally for that. So we took a 6-week hiatus. And if you guys have ever taken a podcast hiatus, you know how hard those first few weeks are to come back. You're like, we found other things we were doing at that time. And so I was like, hey, let's rework this format a little bit. So we've started playing games in the middle of the episode. And I had played a little bit of zombies back in March or April, and I was like, I need a little more before we get on there though. And so I was like, let's just, we're doing that on Saturday. Let's get it really fresh in our brains so then when the conversation is time to go, like we played it as of as of. So you know what? I'm terribly sorry that
No,
we both have the same title, but
no, no, no.
if you just apply the rules of Russia, copyright doesn't work anymore, so I can't sue you for stealing our podcast episode name.
I'm just busting your chops. I came up with a new title. We're calling this one Revenge of the Bee Movie, and no Gen Z, not that one. So I thank you, Josh. Because I feel like this is going to be a quick B movie tangent, but like no one from my students' generation knows the joke they're making. That B movie was a genre of just
Mhm.
cheap movies. You know what I mean? And I remember when I played this game as a kid, Zombies Ate My Neighbors, the back of the box was like Revenge of the B movies. That's how I learned that term. You guys played it as kids though. Mike, did you ever come across this one?
I know that I had crossed paths it. I had not played it much. It's a game that I didn't own, didn't put a lot of time into. I probably had seen the first like two levels, maybe.
So and played it with other people, right? I think you came over to my house, played it a few times.
I'm not even sure. It may well have been like a we rented a few games kind of thing, and this was the one where it's like this isn't going great. Moving on.
And Nick, Josh, you guys are brothers. You guys played it together.
Oh yeah,
It was Super Nintendo, right, Josh? We didn't have this on the Sega.
it was. Yeah, and they ported it over to the Mega Drive, but the Genesis, the Super Nintendo is the best version of it because not only was it made for it, but it also included the flamethrower, which was not included in the Mega Drive version.
It looked really good for a Super Nintendo game. Josh, was the flamethrower included in that version of the game we were playing the other night?
Yes.
Okay.
Very cool. Well, let's dive into it because we're getting into it. Zombies Ate My Neighbors are released on the SNES in 1994. As described on the Nintendo eShop, hey, where's that scary music coming from? Yikes, it's Zombies Ate My Neighbors, where you appear in every demented horror flick ever to make you hurl jujubes. What are Zeke and Julie, our two wholesome teenage stars, doing in a 16-bit game like this? Trying to save the nice neighbors, cheerleaders, and babies from a fate worse than polyester. Who could put this slice of suburbia in such goose pimply hysteria? Zombies, relentless chainsaw maniacs, mummies, evil dolls that just won't die, lizard men, blobs, vampires, giant ants, Martians, and more. Will these crazy kids survive the night? Find your way through 55 horror-filled levels like a grocery store gone bad, a shopping mall awry, a mysterious island, and your own backyard. Don't miss weird kids on the block, Mars needs cheerleaders, and dances with werewolves. You can fend off the freaks with a virtual candy counter of weapons like Uzi squirt guns, exploding soda pop, bazookas, weed whackers, and ancient artifacts. Also grab power-ups Rama like secret potions and Bobo clown decoys. Does this game ever end? Let's go ahead and take a look at the box art because it was often people's first impressions. Josh, Nick, were you the kind of kids where you kept your video game boxes or you just have a stack of cartridges next to the TV?
We had cartridges, but I do remember this box at one point.
Yeah.
Did you guys like take to it? Like it really sticks out in my mind.
I remember being scared of it.
So for me, it wasn't very much the cartridge or the box case. To me, it's always been the opening, the start menu. That was what always got me. That's just the most appealing part of it.
Yeah, and it's spooky. It's kind of gothic sounding.
Mhm.
This box art stuck out in my mind because not a lot of games at this era were using actual pictures of real people.
Mhm.
There's a real model. Someone leave a comment in the YouTube or on Spotify. Let me know if you can figure out who this model is. I really tried hard. I used Google Lens. I researched it. I can't find out who she is. But the image of her afraid in the foreground as the zombies approach from the background, it is kind of unsettling. Like I could see like being young and being scared of this. Mike, do you recognize the far right zombie? Because I think you've seen him before.
I mean, I've seen all three of them before. I didn't recognize them, but it is odd that on this they've been overlaid and they are spread out a bit more.
But so there's actual pictures of people playing zombies. Who are they, Mike?
I do not know their names, but they're almost more like background zombies in Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah. The guy on the far right is named Regis Servinsky. He was the special effects specialist on George Romero's Night of the Living Dead. And his picture is taken from the movie where he also cameos as a zombie. And so, Mike, I didn't know that all three of them were. I thought it was just him. But I mean, you like that movie, right?
Yeah, it's a tad inconsistent, but it really is interesting because it captures a bleakness that is enjoyable. And it's also fairly fascinating because, at least as the director, George Romero has put it, was that their lead character, or at least one of the like two lead characters, they cast a black actor in a role that was not written to be black, which at the time was fairly unheard of. You had movies that would have black lead actors, but they were always like that was an explicit part of how it was written. Like the kind of comparison I go to that gets a bit more attention in modern times would be how like Alien didn't specify that Ripley was going to be a woman. They just cast Sigourney Weaver. And so this is kind of a similar-ish thing.
Yeah, something good happens with horror when you like kind of cast outside the box like that. Speaking of casting outside the box, check out this box art, guys. This is a extremely rare variant cover. Nick, what do you think of this one? You have a kind of a painting of Zeke front and center, and he's blasting a zombie with his squirt gun while monsters are approaching from all sides. Have you seen this one before, Nick?
I have not, but like at first, when I first saw it, I was like, "Oh, this is cheesy." But the more I look at it, I'm like, "Yeah, that zombie's pretty creepy." Oh, the lagoon creature over there, and then I see the werewolf in the background. I see the little slimy guy in the right corner. You know what? This has kind of grown on me in the few minutes I've had it in front of me. I kind of do like it.
I just think that like Zeke does not look like a teenager. He looks like someone's like 21 Jump Streeting and he's like trying to pose as a teenager. It just gives that like, hi, fellow kids, or how you doing, fellow kids?
Yeah. Hey, do you guys want to go down to the soda jerk? Go down to the ice cream parlor and talk to the soda jerk. That is a good box.
There's a big debate online about where this comes from. because people want to, cite their sources. And the most popular theory is that this is from a Mexican re-release. That's a theory that I support from this eBay listing of the variant cover game that says "Made in Mexico" in the bottom right-hand corner. So the cartridge with this special box art is going for an insane amount on eBay, or I should say, it has an insane asking price. You guys want to do a quick Prices Right round? It is a European Retro Games and More. Their eBay store has this up. What do you think they're asking for in US dollars?
In US dollars.
Yeah, Josh, you go first. Closest you can get without going over.
I'm gonna go with 7,000.
7,000. All right. Nick?
I'm gonna go a little lower. I'm gonna say they're probably sitting at a cool $999.
$999. All right, Mike?
$1, Bob.
Okay. The actual asking price is $45,678.90. Josh takes this round. Good job, dude.
I only figured it was going to be higher because I've done my research on some of the very rare variants of games, especially for the Super Nintendo, and they get outrageously expensive.
I've never seen one this high, though.
No, I've never seen one this high. The highest I think I've ever seen is 20,000.
Do we know when that re-release was?
Well, let's see.
I only wonder because it's got the kids and adults rating on it, and I think ESRB was only doing that for a handful of years.
Yeah, no. So when the first released, the ESRB wasn't out yet, so it had not gotten Nintendo. The only thing Nintendo said to Lucas Arts was, "Hey, it cannot have gore, and you can have the violence, you just can't have all the gore."
Yeah, Nintendo famously, like the Mortal Kombat's, like instead of blood, they would be sweat.
Yeah,
So I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really wild. This game was also, the title was, I'm gonna say, maybe censored is not the word, but they toned down the title. It's in the UK and Europe. It was called Zombies, just Zombies, and I was like, it's just strange to me. That doesn't really seem like a title. That seems like a thing in your game. I don't know. But you guys, as you mentioned, it was developed by LucasArts. We will probably see them again at some point, Mike. Like, I think we're gonna have to do an episode 1 racer as a special episode because that was one of the biggest N64 games, and it is on the Switch, so we can do another special episode. Josh, you a fan of this one?
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's my jam.
So what we'll do a special Star Wars Episode 1 Racer episode, and then a week before you guys can release an episode about Star Wars 1 Racer, and then ours will be irrelevant. Okay, awesome.
Well, we'll make sure the same title and everything.
Yeah, same thing.
The Fandom Podcast, we get to go with that?
Yeah. It's also published by Konami. Mike, we hung out with them last week, or last episode, I should say. They did Castlevania and Castlevania Legends. So we've got some trivia here for you guys for our Knowledge is Nintendo Power section. According to an interview with game designer Mike Ebert, which is viewable in the eShop 2-pack of Zombies Ate My Neighbors and Ghoul Patrol, this game was originally intended to have only 36 levels. Once development of the game was finished, Konami's legal team took months and months to clear the red tape, mostly because of like all the parodies in the game. They had to know what they were going to get away with. So the developers, though, were still on salary and didn't have another game assigned to them. So he says they were just hanging out at the office and they got bored and made 20 more levels while they were waiting for the red tape to be cleared. And so that's why if you look towards this, latter half of the game, it's kind of reused concepts because they're like, well, if they get permission to use these Martians, we can do it another level. It doesn't really matter. And a lot of people know about the infamous sequel, Ghoul Patrol. It's not as beloved as this one. Very few people know, though, about the connections to other games in LucasArts catalog. There's a secret level of Day of the Tentacle, which is one of the ones that they added in with their extra time. And this game also has a ancient Greek prequel called Herc's Adventures. Never heard of this one, Nick?
No, never. I knew someone was doing a spiritual successor. Never heard of Herc's Adventures.
So Herc's Adventures was released in 1997 for the Sega Saturn and the PlayStation, and it's an awesome game. It shares more in common with Zelda in that, you have like these items you're using to kind of Metroidvania your way through the overworld map. It's got a really fun sense of humor, though. It's got a cartoony art style like Zombies Ate My Neighbors. It was a lot of the same team working on it. And spoiler alert for Herc's Adventures, if this has made you want to play it, skip the next 2 minutes of this podcast. You find out in that game that the Martians are the secret antagonists of Herc's Adventures, and they are the same Martians to the point of the exact same ship design. And it's just really cool. You got to play this one, Nick.
I love it. I love it when old assets get reused in new games.
But it's fun in Herc's Adventures because you think you're playing this kind of cheeky, cartoony God of War, and then all of a sudden it's like aliens. Like
What are they doing here?
this took a hard left. Before we get into the Joy Pros and the Joy Cons of Zombies Ate My Neighbors, how far did we all get? How far did you get as kids, and how far did you get this time around, Josh?
So this time around, Nick got me killed. I think I only because to keep the nostalgia going, we went ahead and put it on the emulator and played the original SNES version. We wanted to keep it as true as possible because we felt very nostalgic. We wanted to keep it as lore accurate as possible. I think I only made it to level Nick, level 10, I think, if that, before I died.
I think you had died in one of the hedge mazes or one of the warehouses.
You got me killed twice from the Chainsaw Massacre. Yep.
Well, you died on a plant. You died on a plant.
You killed me because you moved. He moved. For those who are unfamiliar with the game, you share a single screen. That's how it was back in the day for couch co-op. So when one person moved far enough away from the screen, the other person either had to follow or someone had to give up and go the other person's way. Well, I'm stuck in a corner surrounded by the thorn plants and the plants still growing stuff. And Nick decides, I'm going to keep moving left because I made it past it. And I'm like, hold on, I can't go anywhere. And guess what happens? I die.
Yeah, see, I had always thought that Nick was the phony, but Nick's actually the one that's really good at this. You were just there.
Yeah, apparently so this time around.
Yeah. All these years of people calling me the fake gamer, and I was the real one all along. I just had to suffer that in silence. So no, as a kid, the level that we would get stuck on the most was the one with the giant wormoids, and I forget what that is. I think it's level 20.
That's level 20.
Yep.
And we would get stuck there, and ironically, that's where I died in our podcast episode, just because I was down to my last life. I was playing the game solo. I should have had a better partner with me at the time. But I have beat the game. I've beaten Dr. Tongue and his ginormous head and his spider form and all that.
Wow.
But it's still a tough game. Even as an adult, this is a hard game.
But you, NintenDON'T, did beat this game.
Nintendo.
Family computer.
Nice job. Are we playing it for Josh too? It sounds like maybe no.
No, the furthest I ever gotten, I think, was it's the one where all the vampires come out. Basically, it's like the map is full of them. I think it's maybe almost 40.
Yeah, the level's called Destroy All Vampires, I believe.
Okay, yeah, I think it's that one. I think that's the furthest I've ever gotten, and honestly, it's one of those games where it's like I don't know if I could ever in one sit through. Like I bet you if I remembered the passwords or put a password in, I could beat it for sure. But I'm like, if I'm gonna play this truthfully and actually enjoy it, I want to do it from level 1 all the way up to the final.
So, Mike, how far did you get?
I made it to level 20, and that took a fair bit of effort even just to get to that.
It's a hard game.
I did that last set of 4 levels a lot, and I couldn't quite get past level 20. I got close. I think I got 2 of them down, and then it was like the third one got me.
So, I'm assuming I don't get to play my sound effect if I beat this as a kid using Game Genie.
No.
No.
I mean, I'm like, do you? But I'm gonna agree with the crowd. I'm not gonna go against the crowd here.
With what Game Genie cheat? Was it
Infinite health, infinite weapons.
Yeah, no.
So, buying it again on the Switch with the 2-pack, it does not have a rewind feature, which made it tough for me. I'm used to beating these games for our podcast with liberal use of rewinding. It does have a save state. You have to quit the game every time you save, but it'll boot so fast that it's really like a couple of button presses to save it. Abusing that, I was able to get to the final level of the game. And I realized I did not have enough ammunition to kill the hordes of monsters blocking me from my hostages I had to go save. So for those who aren't familiar with it, the goal of the game is to save your neighbors, and you have to save at least 1 per level to go to the next level. And I just didn't have enough stuff in my inventory to make it to them. And I watched this interview on the museum section with Mike Ebert, and he says this is a resource management game. The crux of the gameplay is managing your inventory from way earlier in the game so that you have enough to get through the final levels. And so I was okay. He also said in that interview that some people play the game keeping only 1 hostage alive because it makes the levels much faster. If someone gets killed, the next level, that person's not there. So in the first level, you have 10 hostages to save. Let's say 3 die. Next level, you have 7. If you lose 4 more down, you're down to 3. Once you're down to 1, you have 1 shot to beat the level, which is to get to that hostage before a monster kills them. But as a result, some of the levels can be beaten in under 8 seconds because the hostage just spawns nearby the starting point. So I went through all the game again, got to the last level, and I realized I can't beat this boss. It's doing too much damage. And Josh, that's when I learned about the secret weapon of the game. You want to talk about that? The flamethrower?
Yes.
Did you find the flamethrower like when you played it as a kid?
So I think, if I remember correctly, if you set in the credits or the opening scene long enough, eventually it plays like, I used to joke and say it's George Lucas himself. It's one of his playthroughs of the game.
Yeah, you're watching it play itself.
If it's sat there long enough, apparently you got extra ones that usually don't appear. And on one of them, I remember seeing the flamethrower.
No way.
That's the only reason why I knew it even existed.
I up until recently, I didn't believe in the flamethrower.
So it is the best weapon in the game. It behaves like a fire extinguisher, but it does massive damage to everything it hits. And they made the second to last boss, this freaking spider, weak to it. So the only conceivable way to really beat because the bosses in this game are damage sponges. So you really need the flamethrower to realistically kill the spider fast enough on the Super Nintendo version that we played. So I did another run through. You have to go all the way back to level 20 to get the skeleton keys to get the flamethrower, and that's as far as I've gotten. I'm doing my third playthrough getting to the final boss. I'm going to try again. I think I can do it. But my gosh, it was frustrating.
You bring up the way the speedrunners do it. And so after I was routine, so the checkpoints are every 4 levels.
Yeah, you get a password.
And so I kept having to basically start back over at level 17 on for a stretch. And just the one before that was tough to get through as well. And so I had decided, like, okay, I at least want to see what else is in the game. And so I went to go check speedruns of this game. And the first level of the game, the whole premise of the speedrun is to feed 9 out of 10 neighbors to the zombies. And you have to kind of lure them around because they won't kill them until you're sort of close. So you really have to kind of lure them in to get down to 1. And then they went through everything real fast. And I went, well, I keep struggling in some of these levels trying to get to certain people. What if my solution to this, like it is with most things, is I need there to be fewer people that I have to deal with? And I didn't have to do nearly as much work to get them to kill people because I'm not good enough to save them consistently anyway. But I kind of whittle it down to like 4 people. And that was enough for me to actually be able to sort of to make the push from, I guess, levels 12 to 16, and then to get from 16 up to 20, but not beating it. So actually, like, that was an element of resource management, was just, I can't save 10 people a level.
And the director referred to it that way, is that there's 2 resources you're juggling. The number of hostages that is the ideal number to make this game achievable, but then also, your weapons, your items. So Josh, Nick, you guys picked this game. Tell me what you like about it.
So I mean, just off the bat, I'm a big B movie fan. I remember growing up watching a lot of B movies with my grandfather, and that was always something that I really looked forward to. And so just seeing all these B movie monsters, the B movie vibes, that was always something that I really liked. And it's just a fun, colorful game as a kid looking back at it.
The monsters, they're iconic to me. Like, they're so ingrained in my memory. They are so colorful and well animated. And I think my favorite part of the monsters is how, if you are familiar with the lore of the monster, you have an advantage. If you've watched The Blob, you know to use the freezing weapons because the Blob is defeated by the cold. I loved as a kid when you would hit the werewolf with the silverware and instant kill. Because like, oh yeah, it's silver. It was hilarious as a kid. But then the death animation for the werewolf is sick because the werewolf body deflates as the spirit of the neighbor that the werewolf used to be is freed off into the. It's such a cool animation. Josh, did you have a favorite enemies? Because I'm going to complain about them in the Joy-Con section. So let's stick to the positive.
So I did enjoy Stanley Decker, the Chainsaw Maniac. For some reason, he just always stuck with me. Like, yes, he was probably one of the more difficult standard guys eventually down the road, but compared to like the Gravoids, I mean, he was nothing. He was just the fun little guy who chased you around the map and got through just about anything.
And very nicely named too.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, it's a fun one. And then Vlad Belmont, also has a fun name. I'm gonna save him for the cons discussion, but I think to me, there's like some iconic moments of this game. One of them, maybe the first one of the game, is that chainsaw hedge maze. What a freaking chef's kiss of a level idea. Because you have these chainsaw maniacs, you can hear their chainsaws before you see them. So you hear that, and you're like, oh God, this is going to be bad. And they can saw through the walls, they can saw through the hedges. And unless you have a bazooka or a monster potion, you can't. So not only are they at an advantage as far as positioning and mobility, but also you have to lure them sometimes to cutting certain hedges for you. And that's a great monster movie moment, when the person's running away from them and they go zig and zag and then the monster misses them just barely. I love that level. I really, really love it.
It is weird what happens to that character in the European version.
Yeah, he gets turned into the Axeman.
Yep.
So, Mike, did you watch any of that? Because I was wondering. So, I mean, I assume it's because a chainsaw killer is just a little too graphic to picture, I guess. I'm not exactly sure why they had to censor that. It's weird because the Axeman was an actual serial killer.
Did maybe the chainsaw thing just didn't play over on the other side of the pond? Like maybe Texas Chainsaw wasn't like really big over there, was always my thought.
I don't think it even released over there at the time. I think it was under censorship. So I think it was never like they had to come up with something that would help them with their sales. So like, well, what's a movie or a known character over there we could use that'd be similar? I think that's how they came up with it.
I also just think the act of hacking someone with a chainsaw is just, they're both morbid, but the chainsaw is more morbid than the axe.
Oh, well, the chainsaw is just easier.
Yeah, you gotta put less of your back into it. But like, you say that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was under censorship and not released elsewhere, right? So the Axeman of New Orleans is one of the most famous serial killers. So maybe that had more cultural awareness, and so as a touchstone, they switched it.
Is the Axeman of New Orleans the one that said, "I won't kill anyone in any house that's playing jazz tonight"?
Right. So
Yeah.
it led to like this huge surge of jazz popularity and became like Axeman parties. Don't let them get you.
Hollywood's looking to recreate that marketing.
Oh. So listeners, let me know in the comments, what is the audio cue? Because a big part of that level is the chainsaw guy's near because you hear it. Well, I assume they took the chainsaw sound effect out. Is the level just quieter? I don't know. Genuinely curious.
Would it be like a whetstone sound maybe?
Oh, I know what it's gonna be, an axe grinder.
Or that, yeah.
Someone going, "Here's Johnny" every time.
Yeah.
It's just jazz music.
But like very smooth jazz.
Yes.
Be rad. A rumor of a Zombies Ate My Neighbors movie has been kicked around for decades now, and that would be really fun, Mike. Although I guess probably they'd do the chainsaw connection. Tommy the Evil Doll was always my mom's favorite, because in the Genesis version. So Josh, you said just unequivocally that the Super Nintendo version was better. I found myself strangely let down by this Super Nintendo sound effects, because even though Genesis has a drastically inferior sound card, I remember the chainsaws had a lot more on the Genesis. And the evil dolls, do you ever play him on the Genesis version? You ever fight those guys?
Mm-mm.
They go hoo-ah, hoo-ah. and it just repeats hoo-ah, hoo-ah. And my mom called them hoo-has because it just made her laugh so much.
Are they like Al Pacino?
Yeah, that's hoo-ah. This is hoo-ha, Mike. We're doing the whole Vanilla Ice. Dun, 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 dun. It's different. But anyway, wow, that was a tangent. Tommy the Evil Doll, though, because Chucky, I was so scared of Chucky as a kid. Chucky was the scariest idea. And his face, his scarred up, angry face is what really got me. And I love the Tommy the Evil Doll because if you kill that enemy without completely destroying its body, the little demonic fire inner spirit will come at you. And it's just like, that's every little detail about these monsters make them feel like what we saw in the movie. It's such a layered presentation of each of them. The bosses are also pretty memorable. You've got the Titanic Toddler, which was a Honey, I Blew Up the Kids reference.
I did not fight that.
What do you mean?
I never fought that one.
Yes, you did.
No, I didn't.
That's
It's there.
You don't
Oh,
have
you were
to
dead.
No, I was say you don't have to fight that if you have a skeleton key already, which apparently is ridiculously rare, but I picked one up on the level before, went straight past this and just opened the next door and moved on and never fought the baby at all.
Of course you did, Mike.
Oh, that's
You
smart. I
would.
didn't realize that.
You'd leave that poor toddler to be causing a muck.
Not my problem.
That was Mike called him when we played at his house, the boss baby.
Yeah.
The boss baby, I would just spam. What's the treasure chest that does the wow wow?
Pandora's
wow?
box?
Yeah,
Is that Pandora's box? I always just called it the chest.
Yeah.
it
I'm
is.
pretty sure it is. Yeah.
Then we also have the graboids that we mentioned. I discovered in playing for this podcast how to beat them really easily. These guys sucked up all of my bazooka shots as a kid, and I haven't heard anybody mention this. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? The really easy way to kill them with the squirt gun or the weed whacker?
You can weed whack them right as they're coming up, can't you?
Right. And so the trick is to get above them to get further north.
Yeah.
Did you do this, Mike?
Because then they just keep coming to left and right, and you just kind of just turn left and right.
Yeah. You can just spam the weed. I knew the weed whack one, but I didn't know you could do it with the water gun too.
Yeah. So you just, the arc of its bite will miss you each time. And so you kind of just aim and just keep hitting them as they keep trying to get you.
Yeah, I think with the bazookas, it's like you can kill them with 2 to 3 hits. I think the thing that was interesting that I learned about, apparently according to the speedruns, is each time they actually hit you, I think it's like they have 6 health or however this quantizes. But each time they hit you, they gain health back.
Whoa.
I didn't know that.
Freaking.
Apparently, yeah.
They're slurping up your life.
Well, and their hitbox is a nightmare too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so what everybody's saying is like, yeah, like these are really easy if you hit them, but as soon as they start hitting you, they're just healing.
That's fascinating that there's that like hidden mechanic because there's fights against these things. I'm like, why is this one taking so much more? It's because I'm getting tagged. Did you guys know that the game will withhold items and weapons from you if you're well equipped, and if you have if you have less than a certain amount, then you have a higher chance of finding it in like cupboards and stuff?
Yeah.
I was catching up on that the other night because I was doing pretty well for myself, and then I was getting nothing out of any of the drawers, nothing. I just started walking past them because I was like, "What's the point? You're not going to give me anything."
It's a neat way to make sure the game stays tense, but it is also like, are you punishing me for being good at the game and managing my resources really well? Because I don't like that.
At a point the other night, I was water gun, bazooka, and maybe the alien gun. Otherwise, I was sitting on everything else.
The final boss really freaked me out as a kid because it's Dr. Tongue. You see him over and over throughout the game. You'll catch up to him, he'll swig a potion, and he'll either poof into nothing, usually leaving an item behind, or he'll turn into like a giant freaking spider. But the last time after you defeat him in spider form, he respawns as just his giant floating head, and he shoots tongues at you, Dr. Tongue, very appropriate. And then as you attack him more and more, his face starts to take battle damage and decay until eventually his skull cracks open, revealing the deadlights from Stephen King's It, which I thought was a nice touch.
It's a terrifying fight, and it reminded me a lot of I had Star Fox on the brain recently, and it reminded me a lot of the fight with what's that big head?
Andross.
Andross, yeah.
But this is, I would argue, scarier because, Star Fox, like, yeah, I'll zap, 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 missile, missile, missile. This one's like, do I have enough weapons? Do I have enough first aid kits? When you have to manage your own, resources like that, I feel that there's an extra tension to boss fights that take so much damage like he does.
The giant head also just feels like it's about to start dancing to get me to try to go to a Six Flags.
It does have a striking resemblance to the Six Flags guy, yeah. So, it'd be really cool if just the monsters were awesome. I really love the character designs of Zeke and Julie. It's just so burned in my brain, and it's like Zeke's the wacky one because he wears 3D sunglasses everywhere he goes. He's got a skull on his shirt. He's got spiked hair. But then Julie, she's like all business. She's got like that Ghostbusters bomber jacket on. She's got the baseball cap. Like, I don't know. Even though they play identically, I like their designs. What do you guys think?
She really reminds me of like the girlfriend from Brave Little Toaster.
Yeah, I could see that. I'm gonna have fun adding pictures of that to the YouTube video. Thank you for that, Mike.
I do remember having a crush on Julie early on.
The character from the game?
Yeah. It was her and Jill Valentine. They were the two.
They were the babes back in the day.
But I mean, okay, so this is gonna be immature, but like, I played this game when I was like 10, and like the fact that Julie had like a little pixel for cleavage, I was like,
You should see what the second market does to her. Like all of the posters, like not made by Konami or LucasArts, like hypersexualize her, and I'm always like, what are we doing?
Yeah,
Why?
that's a bit much. That's a bit much. The neighbors, the titular neighbors that you have to save. I really love the way that they're animated. The teacher tapping her yardstick against your F minus, you stupid kid. How could you? The tourists taking pictures and kind of chewing on their bubble gum. The military, the soldier being the most frightened of all of them. He's got like this really comical kind of, cartoony eye bulge going on. Is this the only game where you straight up see a baby getting murked? Like the baby dies. The baby is one of the hostages, and it's just a toddler, and it screams, and its ghost flies up. Can you guys think of any other ones?
Yeah, I can't think because Resident Evil 4 has like a journal about all the children being killed, but you don't outright see any of them.
Yeah, the ones that come to mind are Silent Hill, but those are demonic babies in Silent Hill.
Right.
And in Dante's Inferno, they're unbaptized, so I don't think those count.
Well, that's their fault for not being baptized.
They're unbaptized. They don't count. What the heck?
That's the child's fault. Child should have been baptized.
We don't know that. We don't know that the ones in Zombies Ate My Neighbors are baptized.
That's a good point.
Obviously, they're getting into potions and like growing 10 times their size. So obviously, they're sinners.
Hold on. The difference between the babies in Dante's Inferno and the babies and Zombies Ate My Neighbors is the monsters have a conscience and go ahead and baptize them before they devour them.
Yeah,
And that's flavor.
Yeah,
This is good monsters.
The flavor of
not holy
innocence.
water.
All zombies are also registered ministers.
Yes.
That's a different. Mike reads the booklet. The booklet of the game ends with all these other titles we were thinking of calling this game. That would be a good one. That would have been funny.
You know what? When the babies die, when the babies die in Zombies Ate My Neighbors, their little spirit goes up to heaven. So you know what? Not the worst thing to happen to babies in video games.
We're gonna get the audience we always wanted, Mike, just not the one we expected.
Well, hold on. Let's be honest here. They were left alone. Where are their parents?
Standing over there. It's probably the tourists.
You gotta blame go back to the tourist real quick. I
Yeah.
love that they only count as one neighbor. I love how anti-tourism Zombies Ate My Neighbor is, that it's only like, nope, just one. You count as one.
The correct take, because I hate those tourists so much.
Because they turn into werewolves.
Yeah.
They don't even look like tourists. They look like they're like out of age spies. Like the guy's taking the pictures, and the woman's just like glasses down. Like, is anybody watching this? No, okay.
This is a Boris and Natasha knockoff. It's like Boris and Natasha are the Americans.
Nice. Wow.
And to be fair, I always thought the teacher was like a serf or like some Englishman, just because it never looked like a teacher to me. I always thought it was like just a proper Englishman or something. I don't know.
Wait. Then why the F?
What's the teacher look like?
Like, I know that my brain knows that it's a teacher, but I remember as a kid and even playing it recently, like that looks like just like, I don't know, a character you would see in like a Monty Python movie.
Okay. It's totally fair. The levels, I think, are really cool because this game is so well themed that it really puts you in the place. At the mall, and if you break into the kitchen, there's like cheeseburgers in the kitchen, and there's like, oh, I found like a freezer section with some popsicles hidden in there, and there's just this very real sense of place in this game that felt really rare. It almost like, I'm not going to say it's an open world game, but it smacks of open world game because of the way you're interacting with the environment. You're breaking through the walls, you're discovering things. And that was a big focus of game development. The interview said that they developed a tool set to make a lot of levels really, really quickly because they wanted it to feel like this game never ends. I love the special levels. This one's called Spikes, where it's really there's very few monsters. I think it's just a few werewolves, but like it's the entire level is spike floors and you have to time your way through it. This one I thought was really like naughty as a kid. It's called Someplace Very Warm, and it's like it's hell. One of the secret levels is hell, but it's cool though because nowhere else in the game is there lava. That's a texture unique to this one bonus level, and I loved the credit sequence. Do you guys remember this?
The developer, it's basically an office, but it's all the developers sitting around.
Yeah, it's a playable credit sequence because you're in the office, and there's a few other office themed levels in the game, but this one has NPCs that are, the developers, and they introduce themselves and they say what they did in the game. And you can even fight a severed head of Mike Ebert, lead designer, who's floating around like Dr. Tongue style. He's like the only developer you can actually kill. And as a kid, I was like, who is that? But now that I've watched the developer interviews, I recognize him. Just super sick levels. The items, so many of them are cool. Do you guys have favorites?
Monster potion. That is like the one.
What's good about the monster potion?
I like the weed whacker because
Really?
part of my brain is like, oh, you move faster on the weed whacker.
It feels like it, doesn't it? Like Mike would know though. He watched speed runs. Did they weed whack their way to the best time, Mike?
No, but I think it's also because it's more of that's still a resource you need to manage.
Right.
Right. And especially because like towards the end of the game, the spider boss covers the floor in webs. The only thing that can take care of the webs, I think, is the weed whacker. So if you don't have that specific weapon towards the end of the game, you're kind of sunk at that fight. But I agree though with Josh though, the monster potion was just so satisfying. The way that you can just wail your way through enemies. I don't know if it lasts like a full minute. It feels like it lasts longer than you expect it to. It's a really satisfying length. Totally invincible. The snarls of the beast look cool. He sounds cool. He looks cool. And can you guys confirm in the Genesis version, if you're the beast and you try to walk into the water, he goes, nope. Does he still do that in the SNES
I
version?
think he does, yeah.
He does, yeah.
I thought that was so funny as a kid. It was just so cartoony. Do you guys have anything else you love about this game before we start to criticize it?
I love the stingers between each level because instead they could have just been like level 59, ba ba ba. But no, they like the spike levels, they're like, and time for a new terror. Level, I think it's like 18 or wherever it is, spikes. I'm just like, yeah, of course, spikes.
But you're right, though. It adds this nice level of drama to it. You're like, they're back, and it's like another like chainsaw level, and you're like, oh god, like the little stingers, the movie trailers between levels. It didn't even occur to me that that's tying it back to movies. So cool, so
And
cool.
they do callbacks too. They're like, oh, you thought level 37 was scary? Here's its sequel. And they'll like name it the same exact thing, but slap the two on it.
I popped off as a kid because for some reason the movie Them was really popular in the Strauss family. So when I saw a level called Ants, I was like, "Oh my God, that's the weird movie my dad showed me." And I think that's part of the fun you mentioned, Nick, that you're really a fan of B movies. So as a kid who also was kind of fascinated with old horror, this game is just so fun.
Along that same vein is just the amount of humor that it put into the titles isn't just the clear horror movie references, but stuff like one of the levels that I did get to was like seven breakfasts for seven zombies, which is a Seven Brides for Seven Brothers reference,
Right.
which is very much not a B movie or a horror movie. I mean, or I guess it's not a horror movie unless you do consider the fact that it's seven brothers who kidnap seven women and keep them hostage for the winter until by the end of it they're all like complacent wives. So I guess technically that's a horror movie in a modern sense, but at the time that was a fun story. But so stuff like that, I enjoy that there's a lot of creativity in all the stuff that this is referencing.
But like you said, it does not have to be horror. Like the lagoon monster is called Gilman of the Blue Lagoon, aka Brooke Shards, which is a weird Brooke Shields connection. You know what I mean? Like that's a strange thing to reach for.
Let's not include that image.
Okay.
She was young at that time.
Oh no. Oh
yeah.
no.
Oh.
Right.
Hollywood gonna Hollywood.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's got dark. It's in a episode about people already killing babies. It somehow got darker. Man, we gotta.
It was lighthearted baby killing up until this point.
There was a
Oh my
Princess
God.
Di joke in there somewhere.
Well, here, let's just make it positive real quick. My only pro at this point has been the soundtrack. The soundtrack and the level design. Both were just fantastic, especially for the SNES and Genesis era. It was just, you could not get any better than this, honestly.
That's why we played the emulator, because the packaged version on Steam doesn't have the opening credits music. It has the I think it has like the wacky carnival music that you come to expect from the sequel.
It actually it changes. It varies between what you're doing.
But what an iconic theme song. So to lose it in this 2-pack is really a bummer.
Yeah.
And I hear people complaining about that, but it's like, this is our nostalgia. You boot up this game, we were used to hearing that. And I would let the credits just play because I loved the swirl effect. I loved the sound of it. It's just so good. I was humming the themes to myself doing the dishes for like the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for choosing this game. And you reintroduced Zombies Ate My Neighbors music back into my life.
Yeah, and actually, one of the things I did appreciate with the music was I think it's the first time you get to like the castle level around 7 or so. Is the music it's using is Deus Irae, which is most well known now as the music from The Shining.
Oh,
Did not know that.
Didn't know that either.
that's cool.
Yeah, so it's older music, and it's got a little bit of it sounds like that is very clearly what they're doing musically in that level.
Well, and so the last thing I'll touch on as far as Joy Pros is that you guys mentioned earlier, you're playing co-op mode, and it didn't occur to me until I watched the developer interview that when you are separated but still on one screen, so let's say Nick is in a house and Josh is out in the yard, it's possible for Nick to get stuck in the house unless Josh walks so the camera can follow them back to the front door and now Nick gets out. But you can always do that. You can always work as a team to free one of the players that gets stuck by the perspective. And the fact that you never get soft locked and separated from each other on two corners, do you know what I mean? That is just like really good game design that they figured out how to make it feel like you are really stretching the borders of the single screen and exploring separate areas without going into split screen mode. They deserve a lot of credit for that. It's pretty cool.
I don't think it's technically possible for a soft lock of what you described.
You technically could, if depending on where they entered through. If they were following a path, like I said, they broke a wall and went further down and followed it. You could, because technically there could be a locked door somewhere. You don't have a key or have a potion to be able to punch through it, or another wall to break through.
Or the castle levels. The castle levels walls appear behind you.
Yeah, or the tombs. Yeah.
What if you don't have a bazooka or a monster potion to break through, and now you can't maneuver? You know what I mean? So I do. They said that was something they deliberately took a lot of time to get right. So I think it was possible in the context of this game. I'm gonna complain. Here's some Joy Cons for you. I really hate the pod plant and the jelly enemies attack. It launches the goo. Josh, what makes this so frustrating?
You can't do anything when you're gooed up. It is so frustrating.
There's a meme.
There's another title for you.
They launch these blobs high into the air, which is kind of neat. It's like now you feel that there's danger from all sides and above. I love an enemy that introduces a new dimension of threat. Do you get any warning of where it's going to land? I feel like if there was a split second of I see the shadow and I know to step away, I would have been totally fine with this enemy. But it hits you. It's nice when it hits a neighbor because then you have a second to get over there and save them, because if they have blob on their head, it doesn't kill them for a few seconds. But like Josh said, though, I think it's like 3 full seconds, maybe 5 seconds of just walking around. You can't use items. You can't use weapons. You're just stuck and you're going to take 3 damage and there's nothing you can do about it.
It does get nasty too when you have a neighbor that's behind a wall and you don't have a key or you don't have any way to break that wall, and you basically just have to leave and like, yep, that neighbor's dead. That I can't do it. I can't do anything. And I think they die as soon as they exit the screen if they have that on them.
I killed one that way. Like intentionally, but yeah.
And then, flamethrower, it's cool to know it exists now. It's going to be fun to use, but to make the sub boss of the game nigh unbeatable without it, that I feel like that's mean. To make me go back to level 22 out of 46 or whatever it was, it's just like, I don't know if that's good game design. I also hated all the weapons that were just useless, because you only have one button to cycle through all your weapons. So if you pick up freaking tomatoes, there was a lot of times where an enemy was barreling down on me and I'm looking through my pockets trying to find the one weapon I need to kill that monster. I got freaking tomatoes. What am I gonna do with tomatoes? Like, it's comical at first, but it kind of got frustrating. And there's too many weapons that I think are jokes, like plates, tomatoes, the football. It's cool that the football players, you can get a bonus if you toss them the football, but I don't know.
Well, the manual says the tomatoes are good against the Martians.
Well, but the Martians die from one hit of anything. So
I only have what the manual says to work with here.
I remember reading that as a kid and being like, they're one hit enemies. Who cares? Unless they mean the ship, but I mean the soda grenades are way better for taking the ship down. Do you guys know that? You can shoot down the Martian ship.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like between that and the Weed Whacker, those are the only two things I was like, oh, I knew that. I'm comfortable doing that. But of course, I died before we even got to either one of those things. So it said, why even bother?
I did enjoy though, since I was abusing the save state, every time I took a swig of the mystery potion, if I got damaged or got like, what's it called? Kind of taken over by the potion, you can kind of become a zombie yourself. I would just reload. Just save the game right before you take a swig because it's random each time. It's not set to like when you picked it up. Is there anything you guys found frustrating about it?
I don't like how useless co-op makes some of your items. So like the fast shoes are so completely useless when you have your slow partner slowing you down. And nothing against Josh, I love him to death,
Yeah.
but I just wanted to run.
You didn't even use it. You're like, oh, I do not have to get those. They're useless. And then of course I had to use them to save my own life, and it still died.
I always said they were useless in the fact that you were with me. Once you were dead, I was like, oh, I'm game for these.
It's almost like I remembered this game with twin stick controls. I don't remember it being so frustrating that you can only attack the direction you're facing. If you had the ability to like even strafe, right? So like as I'm holding on the fire button, now I can move up and down or something. I don't know. The lack of mobility, I know it was a symptom of having only one D-pad, but like I don't know, could you have done something with like the shoulder buttons on the SNES? Hold down one shoulder button and then now you're not turning. I don't know. It was hard to play with modern expectations. Did you guys find the controls frustrating?
I did, and I think, and I'm not trying to jump ahead with this, but by saying something like this, but I think with the sequel, I do think they added some quality of life improvements that at least made some of the frustrations a little better.
I do think that for me, it was less like a modern sensibility thing and more just I felt like collisions and stuff. Am I picking this neighbor up and stuff like that? Am I hitting this enemy? A lot of that seemed a little clunky. And so there's a lot of misses where it's like, I feel like things should be connecting better. And then I also don't like the map having to be something that like every level I have to put back up. And I'm like, and you're using the L and R buttons for this. I would prefer the L and R to rotate through weapons and have a single button to just toggle the map on or off that I can mostly ignore, which would have also been nice because, and this just may be a controller mapping thing. I feel like the item controls and the weapon controls are like reversed from one another in my mind. And I think it is that it was different on the SNES, but like the current mapping of the controls is like I need to switch just these two buttons so that it's like the upper right are both fire and the bottom left are both rotate through. And instead it's swapped, and that I used a lot of items I didn't mean to use because I kept getting because I didn't use items frequently, and it's like one of these two buttons is going to use this, and I start getting to the point where like I'm not going to use an item until, or I'm not going to try and switch items until I also mean to use the item I'm selected on, just to be safe.
It wrinkled the brain to try to get used to, and that's why I kind of questioned the Josh's saying unequivocally the SNES version is better because the Genesis version I played as a kid, the map is there the whole time, and your heads up display, your number of lives, your points, your weapons, your items, that's above and below the map, so the actual screen is completely clear of clutter, and I preferred it.
How does this person have 26 medkits?
Game Genie.
I was gonna say there is no way. This is only level 17. There's no way.
I also, and I know we talked about it at the beginning where they had extra time and did a bunch of levels off of some old stuff. I got tired of the repetitiveness after around the 35 mark. I was like, okay. You're putting the green water in this. Oh, we're back on the football field. You put the worms on the football field. Not to be a prissy little gamer in 2024, but I was just like, all right, you've shown me all your bells and whistles. Let's get to Dr. Tongue already.
Yeah, there is also and this may just be I just in general I didn't like this as a multiplayer game, but I do think that if you're going to set it up with that, there should be some way of if you get far enough, the second player is back. something like you're already doing every 4 levels is a code, which I'm kind of like, I kind of wish that was also was giving codes for like you were right before a level with a boss rather than 3 levels and then the boss and then the code. But there should have been something where like, okay, if you can get a little bit further, your second player can get back in the game, and not literally they're dead forever.
Well, and we could have reset the game, put in the password, and played as 2 people, but now I've lost all my inventory. You know? Yeah, it's like I mean they figured that out back in Toe Jam and Earl, you know what I mean? Like yeah, definitely.
Yeah, like even just you got to checkpoint level, one of the levels where we give you a code. Here, the other player's back again.
So are we ready to quickly run through its sequel, Ghoul Patrol?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Contain your excitement, Nick. I don't want to get too many followers here. Let's get into its infamous sequel, Ghoul Patrol, on the SNES, released in 1994. As described on the Nintendo eShop, Zeke and Julie are intrepid teenagers visit the Ghosts and Ghouls exhibit at the city library, where they find an old treasure chest containing an ancient spirit book. Naturally, they cannot resist reading it. Suddenly, a horrific snaggletooth spirit emerges. Now, the snarling phantom and his dastardly minions are infesting Metropolis and slithering their way into the history books, where they plan to rewrite history with their spooky ways. Only you have the power to go back in time to despook an encyclopedia of zombified historic dudes. Terminate with prejudice, using crossbows, ping-pong ball machine guns, Martian heat-seeker guns, and more. Vaporize garbage can ghosts and ninja spirits, rescue bug-eyed librarians and wigged-out pirates, dodge flying books and adolescent eating plants. Only our 2 heroes have the power to get the mighty, beastly spirit back into his book and stop the madness. Ghoul Patrol to the rescue. Hell yeah, Ghoul Patrol. Come on, Nick's shaking his head through that whole description.
When that says adolescent eating plants, are the plants in the adolescent stage, or do they only eat adolescents?
Both.
I copied it word for word. It's adolescent-eating. So the adjective would be adolescent eating. Nick, I feel like you have a history with this game. You're not a fan?
Who thought adding a jump button was a good idea to these games? And who thought, hey, let's add a sprint. Hey, everything's still on a D-pad. Let's add a sprint.
But you didn't play this as a kid. Yes, it's super weird.
Wait, there's a sprint?
Yeah, well,
How did I miss that?
you hold down the attack button, which is weird because now to run, I have to waste ammo. Like,
Well, unless you use the crossbow.
sure. But then what, are you going to change weapons?
But still, how am I supposed to know that? I had to figure out the jump button. I didn't even know there was a slide until recently.
I was gonna say, and I'm looking at reviews, and like it got 7s. Like people thought this game was good enough to like be like, it's middle of the road. No.
We're going to fight it out. I'm excited, Nick, because I'm kind of a Ghoul Patrol defender, I gotta say. It's not the better game, Mike. Don't worry. But let's okay, before we get into it, let's see what people's first impressions were. Let's look at the box art here for Ghoul Patrol and the SNES. Mike, what's your take on this one?
I think it lacks all the charm of the original one.
Really? I kind of like it.
So it's a flashback with zombies at my neighbors and having, I guess I was gonna say real zombies on the cover, but that's not really accurate. But at least actors portraying real zombies, it immediately locks into sort of the kind of films that they're going for. And then to go to this, and it's much more cartoony, proportions are different. I mean, it's very much a drawn cover and just kind of surrounded by enemies that don't really have any distinct sense of recognition to them.
Kind of like a comic book sort of cover, but like the proportions are all cartoony. You have Zeke, who is now wearing Julie's hat for some reason. Zeke and Julie in the center, pointing their weapons at monsters that are flanking them from each side. Like Mike said, you have really cartoony depictions of the monsters. They're not really particularly well themed. There's a ghost, a zombie, the devil, ninja. I mean, that ninja might not even be dead. It might just be a human ninja. And then my issue with this cover is that the time portal that you take to go from level to level is behind the focus. It's behind the logo and behind the characters. It's so bright, it almost draws the eye to just the flashing door. You agree, Josh?
Yes, I agree 100%. It's hard to even notice the rest of the stuff because it's right there. And then, of course, you got Ghoul Patrol, with the green right on top of it too. So it's just like, what am I looking at?
Yeah, and it clashes with like the Slimer ghost to the left of it. It just feels like they trade. They're like, hey, we did the B movie thing. Let's trade in that aesthetic and do
See,
Saturday morning cartoon aesthetic.
I was going with straight with the C movies because it's just like they couldn't come up with like more generic creatures and I mean, the bosses. Oh my goodness, we're gonna get me started on them.
Well, we're gonna get you started on them.
I know you're going to, but it's just like compared to the original, it's just hard not to just hate it right off the bat, at least.
I also don't get why it is, because the lead up of this is like they go see this exhibit and they think all the weird stuff that's happening is special effects, which confuses the heck out of me because if this is a sequel, they have already lived through Zombies Ate My Neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, why do you not think that that's in the realm of possibilities here? Like you have prior experience. It's kind of it's like the Scooby-Doo thing of at a certain point, like, why does Shaggy and Scooby keep being like, that's totally a vampire after like 100 times of it totally not being one?
Hey, it only takes one time for it to actually happen, and I'm just, oh, it's not a vampire, and they get bit. I mean, you have to just assume.
Josh is like, I ain't taking that chance.
You have to assume.
which is fair, because I guess the other thing this reminds me of, and this says just as much about me as it does about Ghoul Patrol, is the premise of like, oh, you let this stuff out, now you got to get it all. I'm like, that also is the setup for 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo, where it actually is real ghosts. Yeah. Like the one time it is.
Okay, so let me show you real quick what might be the weirdest box that I've ever seen. This is the European release. It is Nick, what am I looking at? Will you describe it, Nick? I don't even know where to start.
It is a futuristic looking gun with purple smoke coming out of it. And on top of the smoke is Ghoul Patrol with a key in one of the O's. And then the T looks like a skeleton key or maybe like a little devil key. And then around the edges, it's like a green smoke, but there's monsters in it. And there's a random skateboard monster and a random guitar, a random baseball bat, random baseball. Some sunglasses, which I would assume there's an invincible man behind the gun wearing those sunglasses.
This gun has 4 grips.
Yes. And 2 scopes, I think, at the top.
Oh, yeah, it looks like 2 scopes. Either that or it's 2 different barrels.
It's like conjoined twin.
You made this one with AI art before the show, didn't you?
I wish I had, but I honestly think AI these days would have gotten a little bit better. But Nick says it's a random skateboard and a random baseball bat and a random Walkman. He ain't kidding. They're not being held by anything. It's like it's just this collection of things that a boy in the 90s would think is really cool.
Like, if it didn't look quite as good, this would feel more like a clip art demonstration.
Yes, there's no real layout to speak of, and it's just weird too. It's like, okay, so you cut out the chainsaws, which now reinforces that idea that it wasn't about the chainsaws being violent. In the UK, they just didn't have a fearful connection to chainsaws like we do. But it's just like, okay, take the chainsaws, replace them with axes, but the focus of this time is going to be the gun. Like, it's just weird, super, super weird.
I find it very strange that this went. The only thing this does that actually feels like a theming thing is locks and keys as a concept, because both O's are made to be locks. It's just not a takeaway of this.
Yeah, it's you got to see it. On Ghoul Patrol, it was developed again by LucasArts, but according to a 2008 interview with program manager Toshiyashi Morita, the majority of coding for Ghoul Patrol was completed by a little-known Malaysian company called Motion Pixel, who licensed the Zombies Ate My Neighbors engine to develop their own shooter game. And when Zombies Ate My Neighbors was way more successful than LucasArts or Konami was predicting, they went, oh, well, we just licensed the engine out to this other studio. Let's just buy what the work they've done and let's just make that game and turn it into a sequel. So that's why it doesn't feel like Zombies Ate My Neighbors, Nick, is because it's the Mario 2 situation. It wasn't Zombies Ate My Neighbors. They just applied a Zombies Ate My Neighbors coat of paint over everything. Did you know that?
I mean, it still doesn't give it any excuse.
Ah! Well, one thing I did like about it right from jump was that it has a cutscene at the beginning. There's a bigger effort and storytelling. Mm-hmm. So as Mike mentioned, Zeke and Julie go to the library. In order to summon the demon and release it onto the world, they have to say it is ghosts and demons time backwards. which like I kind of got a chuckle out of it, sort of like an Evil Dead. Which is the Evil Dead where he accidentally like summons the enemies by like saying the incantation wrong? Which one is
Mhm.
that one?
That he has to say Klaatu Barada Nikto.
Is that it? Yeah.
Except he can't remember one of those, so he just kind of like mumbles his way thinking it would work.
I might not have gotten every single syllable, but I said it. Okay.
Emis, Nomad, Nindes, CT. Yeah, nothing happens.
Yeah. It's very Evan Itniage thing going.
So I'm gonna pause our discussion on Ghoul Patrol before Nick just dumps all over it. I was so impressed at your guys's episode, your farewell to Game Informer segment recently on Smashing Game Time. Josh went in and got the list of all of Game Informer magazine's games of the year and challenged Nick to guess them. And Nick, you only missed like 4 or 5.
Oh man, that feels like forever ago. But yeah, like I was super surprised. I think Half-Life 2 didn't win the year that it came out, but yeah, that was a fun little game, and I'm gonna miss them.
Yeah, you guys, it was a nice tribute to the late great Hannibal Lecter. I'm sorry, Game Informer. I get those confused all the time. So I thought we could play a quick mini game minute. We are calling this tie.
Oh,
What I'm gonna
I
do-
see what you did there.
See what I did there?
That was
Let's say
clever.
what backwards. Okay, so with this game, I am going to say a famous video game character backwards. Your job is to blurt out the actual video game character's name first. In the event of a tie, I have a tiebreaker one between the people who had it closest. You guys are ready? Very simple game, only 5 questions. You ready?
Yes,
Do it.
All right, I'm going to say the video game character backwards. You just say what you say it as fast as you can, and hopefully Zoom will light up the box first, and I'll know. Okay, first one, the round number 1. Oi Ram,
Mario.
Nick. 1 point for Nick. All right, round number 2. Namcap. Namcap.
Oh, Pac-Man.
There it is, Mike. All right, round number 3. Hinos. Hinos.
Samus. No.
Hinos. Hinos. You gotta go to Safan. First letter's a C. Hinos. You guys aren't fast enough to get this one?
Enos.
That one was Sonic. Okay, no one got that
Oh.
one. Well, okay, this might get too hard. All right, round number 4. To fork a roll. It's 2 names. To fork a roll.
Laura Croft.
Yes, Mike. All right, final round. Double points. So Josh, you're still in it. 711 Nihaj. 711 Nihaj. Do it backwards. 711 Naj.
Pardon, 117? John 117?
Yes, John
Okay.
117.
The heck is that?
It's Master Chief.
Wait. It's fake Retsum. Fake Retsum tiebreaker.
Master Chief?
Mike wins.
Just writing that last one out.
I was like, hey, everyone got a point.
Yeah, I got 2 points at least. I'm happy.
All right. So before we get into the joy pros and joy cons of Ghoul Patrol, how far did we each get? Nick, you didn't like it. Did you play a lot of it?
I think I stopped after the first or second level.
Okay. So you did not beat it. What about you, Josh?
I beat it.
Nintendo.
Family computer.
And you know what? I also Nintended.
Nintendo.
Family computer.
What about you, Mike?
I understand what's wrong with Jaymo. Why did you beat this?
Because I am a completionist and I like to finish things all the way through. And this was a lot more easier to do with this one than it was with Zombies Ate My Neighbors. That is the only, honestly, this slide alone saved my life so many times. And the crossbow, the fact that it was unlimited, I didn't have to worry about wasting the rest of it all.
I got like 3 levels and it was just so thoroughly unpleasant that I'm like, I'm gonna have to keep replaying these 3 just to try to get to the next checkpoint level, like to get to that checkpoint level. I'm not doing that.
I mean, honestly, once I got to the pirate world, I started to go, oh my God, will this nightmare ever end?
But you were too deep in. You had to see it through.
I'm like, yeah, I've gone this far. I have to keep going. Let's do it.
Yeah, I think it says a lot about this game that like when I couldn't get further, I'm like, I'll go look up Games Done Quick playthrough of it. It has never been played at Games Done Quick. In fact,
It's not.
like Zombies Ate My Neighbors, great playthrough. They're in costume as the main characters. It's fun. There's tons of people that have tried to speedrun Zombies Ate My Neighbors. Ghoul Patrol, has one dude who has sped run this, and I think that's just because he's just working through a bajillion games. Actually, weirdly, he also has the speedrun record for Spanky's Quest. Weirdly enough,
Oddly specific.
weird game that we've covered before. I think he also has the speedrun on Aladdin, but like
Wow.
that's a known game. So yeah, he's working through a lot. He's the only one that's even bothered on this. Literally anyone that would like to go submit a time and video for Ghoul Patrol can be the number 2 speedrunner of this game.
So look, you guys are really dumping on it. So let me go rapid fire through what I liked about it, okay? Because was it as good as Zombies Ate My Neighbors? No, but this game has some ideas. It has some things that they added. Josh mentioning the slide, the mobility in Zombies Ate My Neighbors, I found really frustrating. The control, the hitbox is real wonky. I wasn't quite as fast as I wanted to be. This game adds a slide, which is basically a dodge, if we're being honest. As the enemy's coming towards you, and you just with a tap of a button, you'll slide across the floor. And I thought a pretty satisfying way. And the fact that you could also jump, and I know you said whose idea was it to add a jump button? Well, in like the hotel level, for example, there might be a room full of enemies. I jump up on top of the cabinet, and now I'm out of their reach, but I can still shoot them.
Mhm.
So like strategically, it's the equivalent of like, oh, there's a mouse in the room, get up on the furniture so it can't touch you. Like, was it needed? No. Were there moments where I liked it? Yeah. Josh, do you agree?
Yes, so it was very useful, especially at the hotel level, especially the eyeballs and the skulls. My God, they bouncing around everywhere. You can kill the eyes with one hit, but they just kept respawning and kept coming. And it's like, oh Lord, is this ever going to end? And if you weren't dealing with them, you're dealing with the ghost Karens.
The ghost Karens.
Obviously they're ghosts. I'm assuming they're supposed to be like old money ladies, but
Yeah.
but they were just so annoying because you would kill them and they would just respawn. And it's like the only way to truly avoid them was you either got lucky and slid past them and were okay, or you took the hit while going through a room that's full of them. I mean, to the point where there's one specific hallway in particular where it's narrow at one point, it's all eyeballs, and you go further down, and then it's skulls, and then it's also the old Karens spawning. It's like literally they're all over, and you don't have anything in your inventory yet that's other than the potion that is strong enough to be able to deal with all that. You basically have to just take the hits and run.
But it's pointless to deal with it though, because like as you said, the enemies are respawning literally instantaneously.
Yep.
So it's less of like a enemy and more like there's like a hole in the dam and it's burst and it's just like
Yeah, it's an obstacle.
it's an absolute obstacle. I did though on some level enjoy not stressing out about my ammunition, giving me the crossbow with infinite ammo, and yeah, it's your slowest weapon, but it's still you can still take things out with it. It's no slouch.
I mean, let's see. With zombies, it was like 3 hits. With the ghost Karens, it was like I think for most enemies it was 3 hits, other than some of the bigger threats like the pot and pans and the trees. Honestly,
The aesthetic, the graphics, they're not terrible. Like some of the enemies have some nice detail. I like the bellhop monster here. You get the sense that there was a hotel fire because all the bellhops are burned up to their torso,
Mhm.
and it's like, I also like Jaws. Jaws made it in this time, like, maybe arguably the most important horror movie of all time. And now it has some representation, and they're cool and they look cool. And, they come at you. They're basically the gill men, but they don't jump out of the water. But I don't know, like it's a time travel game because the demon comes out in the library, he travels back in time through the history books, just wibbly wobbly magic, whatever, right? And so the neighbors are themed to the time period that you're in. So like when you go to the Caribbean, the neighbors are now this drunken captain guy, and you go to the Ming Dynasty and it's like people in, pretty stereotypical Chinese outfits, but it gave me something to look forward to because it was changing. And like Zombies Ate My Neighbors, you had that. You had like, okay, the cheerleaders are a lot of them are in the football level, but they've also seen the whole game. So I don't know. I kind of liked the look of this game. What do you guys think?
I was mentioned with the neighbors, there is the interesting element that messes with the speedrunners. That like each time you go to a new time period, you go back to 10 victims.
Yeah,
And so the speedrunners have to go back through the pruning of the neighbors.
right. Yeah, because that mechanic is the same. You still advance through the game in the same way of saving the hostages, essentially.
now only if they give us the ability to maybe make those neighbors disappear.
Yeah. It also ditches the radar for a visual cue. The neighbors will scream this way, help, and their little word bubbles will fly from off screen, and so you know which direction to go. Unfortunately, the levels kind of become maze-like, so you will often hit dead ends. It doesn't work great, but I don't know. Like there are moments in Zombies Ate My Neighbors where I'm like, where is this last neighbor? They're not anywhere on my radar. I'm wandering for like 5 minutes through this level. This one, you always have a sense of where to go.
Yeah, I think if honestly that's the only issue between both is if they just flip-flopped how they did it, I think they'd be better to an extent.
And then the last thing I'll say is that the bosses, like some of them look pretty cool. They're big. They're visually interesting.
3 of them don't have legs though.
They look pretty cool if they're not moving.
Right. If they're moving, they're just sliding around the screen. So I think we're going to transition. I kind of want to force Nick to say one nice thing about this game. You guys hear him?
Nick, you're muted. Did he
One nice
purposely-
thing, and he mutes himself. That is
Hold
freaking.
on.
You can't rehearse that. That's amazing, Nick.
They didn't.
He's like, I
tell
already
us
said it. I'm not
was-
saying it again.
Oh, okay. No, I do like the way it looks. I do think it's got a pretty coat of paint on it.
And it's more zoomed in, so you get a bit more detail with like the animations and the movements. But like I said, the bosses look kind of cool, but they're also kind of a bummer. Mike said they don't move very well. Josh said, yeah, 3 of them have no legs because they're the same. It's just a different skin over the same boss fight.
It's the same boss fight, different different.
One of
skin,
those is
different
without the
boss.
skin.
The demon. Well, no, actually, I guess several of them, if you think about it. 3 of them, right? 3 of them are.
I mean, technically, 2 of them have skin. One does. 2 of them don't have skin. And one's just a robot.
That RoboCop has skin underneath.
Yeah, that's the weirdest one. I remember I got to that at Mike's house, and it's because like I just want you to see this, and he's like, "What the heck?" Because it's not horror at all. It's RoboCop 2, right? Isn't that what they're going for?
See, that's what I
Maybe.
thought they were going for, but honestly, I have no idea, to be honest, what they were going for there. Like, there's nothing in that repertoire of like horror theme that's like other than Terminator, but even then,
Oh my gosh,
that's not very Terminator. Terminator.
Terminator would have been a better pull. Yeah.
we cracked it though. That must have been an asset from the original team before it got the Zombies Ate My Neighbors theming,
Probably, yeah.
and they were like, "Leave it, good enough."
They're like,
We don't
"Hey,
need. Yeah, we've
screw
got
it,
this.
leave it."
You guys made that boss. We'll keep them. We're good with it. And then the rest of the team made 4. The other 4.
I don't like the new beast potion. So very few items make the jump here. You got like your first aid kit, your potions, your keys. Isn't that it?
Pretty much, yeah.
No Pandora's boxes, no decoys. But instead of turning into a purple monster that punches the living daylights out of everything, you turn into the Grim Reaper, which is like that's weird thematically, you know?
It should be make it a monster, but yeah, make it not the Grim Reaper.
Right. I like the beast better because the Grim Reaper controls very slidey and like thematically that connects, but like it wasn't more fun. And it's also like this mad scientist potion turns you into the concept of death. Like it just didn't land.
I also don't like the fact that with that one, especially if you don't realize it will have this limitation, is so they added in, now you can jump. But then if you're the Grim Reaper, you can't jump. And so if you use it in the wrong spot, you're stuck, which is both just generally frustrating and unnecessary. And also weird because the Grim Reaper is floating off the ground. So I don't know how small walls stops him.
I don't know how walls stop him in general, to be honest. He should be able to go through them.
Yeah.
I mean, that'd be fun.
So I didn't mind him as far as like fighting with like the generic enemies. Like obviously he's gonna one hit everything. That's great. But I do agree. If you try to use him in a boss fight, it was just not really worth it. He slides around. He moves too slow compared to the monster. And as far as like his hits go, with the monster, you could just keep mashing in that button, and the monster was just gonna beat the shit out of him. Yeah, where he's just like, okay, wait a second. Okay, no, it's like no, like unless he's gonna sit here and like twiddle his little scythe, like come on.
Yeah, and like, and the monster is such an empowering feeling in the first game. And like the bazooka is so empowering in the first game.
And they got rid of both of them.
Yeah, they removed both of them. The bazooka is now a grenade launcher, which first of all, you can't destroy the environment in this game. You're not breaking through walls and stuff. And the grenade launcher, like it will do this perfect arc over the enemy right in front of you. It's really good against bosses because they're such a big target. But again, I don't like weapons. It's like, oh, this is for that very specific scenario and nothing else. it really annoyed me how these levels end. In Zombies Ate My Neighbors, when the final victim is either saved or is killed, a little cheeky exit door will appear out of nowhere. It's very cartoony. In this game, the time portal will appear, but it's at a set location somewhere else in the level. So Josh can attest that the platforming challenges in the final world are insane.
It's ridiculous.
Were you abusing the save feature and like, okay, I'll save it and then make the jump and
Yeah, very much so. It's honestly, if you didn't, I don't know how you would even, without using a speedrun strat, I don't know how you would beat this game legitimately, because it's like it just gets so frustrating. Like I said, just the hotel alone, you would get stuck in these hallways and you would have to go against enemies. You'd have to take the hits. Towards the end of the game, it's almost impossible.
I just don't get why this even threw in platforming towards the end, like at all.
Yeah, they didn't need it.
I mean, it's another challenge. It just did do it very well. And I think maybe the worst part about the platforming is that if you fall, it's instant. You just lost a life. You don't get respawned with your life near the ledge like modern gaming. It's like, so you slip 3 times in a row. Well, you had a good run, but you're all done now.
Actually had a run end at the hotel because I went outside for the first time thinking, oh, that's a sidewalk. Nope, walked right off the edge.
Okay, I thought that was a sidewalk too.
Yeah, that was the first. I was like, where am I supposed to go? And I was like, oh, I go out this window. That's weird. And I was like, oh, that's a sidewalk. Okay, it makes more sense now. Nope, that is not a sidewalk.
Nick, you mentioned like you like the stingers, like all the cool theming is just gone from this game. You don't have the stingers. You don't even have the here's which player saved more hostages screen. The levels aren't even freaking named. It's like, did you care?
I mean, the theming between things don't even. I'm just like, travel through time. That's not. There's not really a coherence to that.
And the pacing, my biggest issue is the pacing. Like the first time I booted this up and found myself in a level, I was like, oh, you're just throwing every damn thing at me right now. Okay, you're not like introducing like one thing at a time. It's all the whole kit and caboodle. And I'm getting this long 7-minute level. Whereas like most Zombies Ate My Neighbors levels, you can beat in like 3 minutes.
And the enemies are all just reskins of each other.
Yep.
It's like this ghost, the bellhop ghost behaves exactly the same as the Chinese ghost from the Ming Dynasty. It moves exactly the same. There's, enemies aren't weak to certain things from the movies they came from. It's just an utterly less interesting game in a lot of ways.
I feel like between George Lucas running out of Star Wars money to buy his drugs and Konami getting ready to
allegedly,
and Konami getting ready to pay out the ass to have Metal Gear Solid appear on PS1. Everybody was hurting for money, and they're like, well, you know what? Zombies Ate My Neighbors did really good. Let's just try and get some quick cash. And all they did was just, like you said, reskin from whatever game was being made.
And last but not least, I feel like they need to address it. It's really weird you guys brought up Aladdin, because the music from Ghoul Patrol, it's just not as good as Zombies Ate My Neighbors. It's not awful, but Zombies Ate My Neighbors is iconic, it's memorable. There's nothing to really remember about Ghoul Patrol's music, except for its liberal use of the, I don't know if this term is okay to say anymore, the Oriental riff. It's a chord progression from an 1847 stage play called The Grand Chinese Spectacle of Aladdin, and it's become, sort of the musical embodiment of racial stereotyping. If you imagine a series of chords that would play at the start of an Asian level, that's what you imagine is exactly what it is, and it happens over and over again in the level. I was just like, this hasn't aged well, and it keeps doing it.
Well, the music's also really cartoon. Like the music feels like they were going for Saturday cartoon.
Yeah, nothing ominous about it. Just like.
And I'm watching image. Yeah, I'm watching image of the ancient China or ancient Japan levels, the feudal Japan levels, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, you couldn't do this today.
Yeah, it's not great. Anything else to criticize about Ghoul Patrol?
Yeah, I think the movement is atrocious. I think it just feels slow. It feels clunky. There's too many times where I'm getting stuck on weird corners of things. Like, for me, it was horrifically a downgrade from the movement in Zombies Ate My Neighbors.
Yeah, I mean, again, I liked having more movement options, and I thought the slide was really satisfying. I have a video I'm going to put in the episode of me just sliding back and forth, dodging the boss attacks and whittling it down. I was like, okay, is this boss like visually better than Zombies Ate My Neighbors? No. Is it less interesting? Yes. Am I having more fun fighting this boss than I was having fighting the spider? Kinda.
I mean, it was less frustrating.
Right. And there's something to be said for that. But was it more fun? Nah, I don't.
I mean, it was frustrating to get through doors in this for me.
There was too many doors.
Yeah. And keys everywhere. And it's like, why did you make me have keys? I never ran out of keys.
Yeah, like I mean, I didn't mind there being so many doors, but there's an issue when you had 5 doors leading all into the same room that had 5 more doors leading into the same. Like, what were you thinking?
Well, there's this really infamous level in Zombies Ate My Neighbors where you start at a castle and it requires a key to open up the double doors, but you can accidentally open up both sides and waste a key.
Right.
And this game kept doing that.
Yeah, like I think it felt like every other level. That's all it was.
Right.
And I think there's something about, especially because I played some of this and then went back to play more Zombies Ate My Neighbors,
Smart move.
was having the moment where you're like, okay, I've cleared the screen. What the heck do I have to do next? And you're just kind of like, I'm safe right now, but I can't stay here forever. That kind of, it has this tension to it that I think, and it fits the genre. You have a lot of those things that have a moment where it's like, we're currently safe, but this is not a permanent solution. And there's never that in this game because it doesn't, like, it just keeps spawning junk at you. Whereas at least Zombies Ate My Neighbors, you'd be like, okay, where I am right now is okay. As soon as I move, it's a problem again. And I think losing that, like, it's like, but there's more enemies. It's like, yeah, but you've removed, there's no ups and downs and sense of tension building or the moment to like, okay, what's my next move?
Yeah, it's a different genre. It's just straight up kind of arcade style shooter.
Yeah.
And I agree. It's worse for it. That's what Nick mentioned. The pacing. The pacing is just poo poo garbage.
The level's just way too big. There's way too much going on. They needed to. I think the levels would have been better if they'd introduced like 1 or 2 creatures at a time instead of throwing the whole thing at you. Because now it just, I get everything in that first level. Okay, now I'm playing all the feudal Japan levels back to back to back to back. I'm not getting anything new. I'm just getting the new level that you designed.
And the enemies again are reskins.
They should have mixed up the levels. Like, okay, you just keep going through time and it's different time periods every time. And on top of that, with the potion, instead of making it Grim Reaper, have it be like maybe a mythical creature of that era.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I'd like that a lot. Like Caribbean, now you're Davy Jones.
Yep.
That'd be fun.
Or okay, now you're in Japan. Okay, now you're going to be this dragon or this famous samurai or whatever.
But you guys, Grim Reaper is present throughout all of them.
He was there the whole time. All right, so guys, let's wrap up today's episode by declaring each game a NintenDO or a NintenDON'T. We'll start off with Zombies Ate My Neighbors. Nick, can we have you go first?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly believe Zombies Ate My Neighbors is a Nintendo.
Would you call it a Super Nintendo?
I would call it a Super Nintendo.
But it's not a must play. It's not a Nintendo 64.
I would take it all through all of it and say, yeah, play it.
Wow, all the way to the tippy top.
All the way to the top.
Josh, what about you?
I would Super Nintendo prove.
It's a good game. Mike?
I'd go Nintendo.
I'm surprised this isn't an easier recommendation because a lot of this game feels dated by modern game design standards, especially regarding its controls and its hit detection. But there's way too many neat ideas in here for you to not experience it. It's fun to see, it's fun to hear it, and the enemies are fun to dispatch with like your Home Alone style arsenal. I think it's worth the price of admission. I think you're getting your $15 out of it, even if you buy the 2-pack. So yeah, Nintendo for Zombies Ate My Neighbors. I'm gonna go first on Ghoul Patrol because I know it's gonna be rough. Okay, so let me in teaching we build kids up. Okay, you start with a positive. Okay, Ghoul Patrol is weird to rank because is it worth it on its own? No, it's not. But you can't buy this game on its own unless you're going to track down the original cartridge and have a functioning SNES. It's being sold as a 2-pack. So if you buy the 2-pack for the better game, is this worth your time? Yeah. I think it's worth checking out because like the things that frustrate you about Zombies Ate My Neighbors might be fixed in Ghoul Patrol. And if you're more forgiving with like weird controls, you might prefer this game better if you're more of a straight up action arcade shooter person than you are like a resource management one. So since if you have Zombies Ate My Neighbors, you probably have this anyway. I'm going Nintendo. Nick?
I'm gonna say Nintendo, don't do this to yourself and just replay Zombies Ate My Neighbors a second time if you're getting the feel. If you feel like you need to go play Ghoul Patrol, just go play the first game again.
Josh?
I'm I'm thinking
He's gonna join me.
I think I'm gonna join Jaymo just because honestly, he's right. You might as well at least play it once, get it over with. Like even if you're gonna sit here and say like only play Zombies Ate My Neighbors, that's fine. Leave that for last. Do Ghoul Patrol first, just so you can see like, oh, the Zombies Ate My Neighbors is 10 times better. Why didn't I start with that? We'll say, well, because if you didn't start with Ghoul Patrol, you'd get 2 levels in and go, why am I doing this to myself?
Wouldn't it be wild if Mike also joins Team Nintendo?
Yeah, except the thing is,
What do you got, Mike?
I have integrity. I'm going Super NintenDON'T.
Do it.
Honestly, pay more to get Zombies Ate My Neighbors without this, if that's an option.
Ooh.
This is, I can't, like, it baffles me to hear. Like, I can't see enjoying what Zombies Ate My Neighbors and then going to this and feeling like you're getting more of what you liked out of Zombies Ate My Neighbors.
Well, that's freaking exciting because we have once again another viewer vote. So hop onto Spotify if you're listening there and let us know, is Ghoul Patrol Nintendo or NintenDON'T? We're split 2v2. Guys, that was the moment of truth. We covered the Joy Pros, the Joy Cons, and every bit in between. The final verdict is Zombies Ate My Neighbors is a Nintendo, and Ghoul Patrol, it's up to you. Let us know, listener, what you think. We're going to call that game over for today. Nick, Josh, that was a long time coming. Thank you so much for joining us. Before you go, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find your stuff?
Yeah, well, Jaymo and Mike, we appreciate you guys having us here. You can find us over at Smashing Game Time is the podcast. Website smashinggametime.com. It's where the podcast is posted and words are posted. We've got some words that we have to type up on there. We're a little overdue on it. And then if you want to follow us, I'm that Kaufman on Twitter. Josh, where can they find you on Twitter?
You can find me anywhere and everywhere, and I'm Josh Sang.
Hey, but he doesn't say much.
I do not, especially now.
And then if you're looking for further reading, I'm a contributor on the Hard Drive magazine, the gaming satire website. So go check that out as well. I've got some pieces going up. But Jaymo, Mike, thank you again for having us. Like you said, this is a long time coming, and we hope we get to do it again.
Yes, we have a lot of fun with you guys. So we look forward to many more contributions to each other. So
Episode 1 Racer, it's going to be a thing. Here we go.
I'm game for it. I will gladly sit down and have nostalgia with it over and over.
It's so much fun, you guys. That all sounds excellent. Everyone join us next time when Mike and I will be running and gunning back into the Nintendo Switch Online Retro Catalog. Next on the docket, 2 treasures of the shooter genre, Gunstar Heroes for the Sega Genesis, and our very first ever Japanese import game, Sin and Punishment for the Nintendo 64. Josh, you like that?
I like both. I liked both those. So yes, I will be gladly listening to that one.
We can't wait. Also, everyone, don't forget to visit www.theoldswitcharoo.com. There you can find links to our Spotify, our Discord, our YouTube, our TikTok, and all the social medias you can shake a joystick at. You can even leave an old-timey voicemail, meaning we would literally love to hear from you. Big thanks to Crystal Fields for our incredible intro song. And thank you, dear listener, for liking, commenting, subscribing, and reviewing. This has been the Old Switcheroo, where we've been talking gaming retro with Mike and Jaymo.
I've been Mike.
And I've been Jaymo. Game on, everyone. Episode. Yay. One take. Look at us.
I love it. And I love the intro. I heard it this morning. I was like, oh, that's a jamming intro.
It's so good.
It's
like,
really good.
I hum it to myself. We'll have to leave this in. Like, Crystal will love to hear that.
I don't know
And
if you
she's
guys...
such a jerk. She knocked it out in like one afternoon. Like, I'm like, come on.
She's like, I don't know. Maybe you guys will like this. And it ends up being like this great thing.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I didn't like an afternoon. I don't know.
We're more known for the song than the podcast.
One of the follow-up movies that Disney did is like a prequel movie for Little Mermaid, where you find out what happened to Ariel's mom, and it's that she got ran over by a boat. And that's why there's all this anti-human stuff. And it's just like, how does that happen?
It was a cover-up.
If it was a motorboat, I would be like, oh, this makes sense. But
It's just like Princess Di. The royals really didn't like her mom, so
they tied her up and had her sitting out there waiting for it.
it was an inside job. They put her on a rock and they stranded her, and then first boat that came by, they threw her in. She was all dried up anyway, and the boat just obliterated her.
It's a boat full of paparazzi that are just trying to paint really fast what they see.
The royals, man.